Okay, so today we're going to talk quickly about basic trig ratios, and then we're going to go a little bit beyond it. Beyond them, that is. Okay? So sine, if I was to draw a triangle, it's going to be a right triangle. And you're used to seeing the points, the vertices as points, but I'm not going to do that today, okay? I'm going to label the angle with something that we call a theta, okay? And what it is, I'll write it up here a little bit bigger. It's a O with a line through it. You can also kind of write it like that, a bunch of different things. Theta is just another way that mathematicians use to mark angles, okay? And so theta is very specifically an angle marker. It's another Greek letter, theta. So instead of using X or question mark or A or whatever, we're going to start using this theta symbol. So if I mark this angle as theta, and I'm just going to give these the sides A, B, and I'm going to say H for hypotenuse. So A and B are the legs, and H equals the hypotenuse, because we've been doing that a lot. Okay, soon you're going to see this in a different way. The sine of theta in this triangle is going to be opposite over hypotenuse. So we're going to write it as A over H. The cosine of theta is going to be the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So we're going to write it as B over H. And the tangent of theta is opposite over adjacent, so we're going to write it as A over B. So these are your basic trig ratios. The only kind of new thing on here is that symbol called theta. And we're going to go one step further. There are ratios that come out of sine, cosine, and tangent, and they're named something different, but what they are is they're simply the reciprocal of each of the sine, cosine, and tangent. So we have something called, and I'm going to put it in blue, no, I'll put it in black. The reciprocal of the sine ratio is called the cosecant ratio. And it's simply the reciprocal. And so we label cosecant, because we always want to do it with 3 letters because it's easier. We label it as CSC. So the cosecant of theta is simply the reciprocal of the sine ratio. So we know that reciprocal is when you flip the fraction. We have a reciprocal function of the cosine ratio, and that's called the secant ratio. And we symbolize that as SEC. So the secant of theta is going to be the reciprocal of the cosine, and that's going to be H over B. And then the last one is something a little bit easier than these two guys because it's a little confusing. They're completely different names, but the reciprocal of the tangent ratio is called the cotangent ratio. And we symbolize that as COT. So the cotangent of theta is going to be B over A. So this looks a little confusing, but now what we have to get out of this is that there are now 6 ratios for our trig ratios that we can use. So there are 6 ratios. And they're all kind of dependent upon each other. So it's going to be important for you to see how they connect to each other. So again, let's quickly just wrap it up. Sine, okay, and cosecant are connected because they are reciprocals of each other. Cosine and secant are connected because they're reciprocals of each other. And tangent and cotangent are connected because they're reciprocals of each other. So if you get confused, all you have to do is remember your TOA, and then you can use those to help you out. We're going to do some practice word problems, and we're going to do some practice problems that help you use all of these symbols. So once you get through understanding that there's simply 6 ratios instead of the 3 that we've been studying, study this up, and the work should be pretty much the same as when we did these, but we just have to practice these.